Start the meeting, call to order. Pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Yeah, start the meeting. Nice job. Nice job. How are you? That's good. All right, I'll take attendance. Neil Mascola here. Eileen Bronco.
Here.
Tommy Kieran. Here. AJ Bordes. Here. Francis Santana.
Here.
Rick Cool. Here. All right, so I will accept the motion to approve the minutes of the April 19th, 2023 zoning commission meeting.
I make a motion, does anyone have correction?
Yeah, why don't we correct it now, and then we'll approve.
Page 1. Michelle Healy, typically she has her title, right? Should be a comma with her title, like everybody else.
Okay, up at the top.
Yeah, and that's also, page 4, I think her name appears also.
Yeah.
Comma title. And, under that, for Nabowski, left at, and I think the time is supposed to be put in. I just said left at,
Yeah.
and that's all I have.
Okay. That was last one. He was there, wasn't he?
Fran, I believe so, on.
He was.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah.
Sometimes she just copies and pastes,
Oh,
from a previous meeting on the top. But we can have her fix that. She
Yeah.
might have put it in, just to catch it.
Go first.
Yep.
Second. All in favor? Aye, with the changes. So are we, open up to, public hearing? Public comment? On the chickens?
Sure. So we do have a family here. I have previously presented their letter that they sent in to us. And if Mr. Carrington was going to speak, we'll let him, and this way. It's that people will be able to come and go, hopefully before the rain hits.
Where did I?
You can come right up over here if you'd like, or again, just state your name and
Yeah.
address.
So Ken Farrington, 599 High Street. And we, as you saw there regarding the accessory use for poultry. Our experience the last 3 years, we've had them the last 3 years. Unfortunately, I didn't even know about the discussions that you guys had a year and a half ago, the whole, topic of the regulations on that. But I just basically wanted to kind of appeal to, I appreciate the changes that were made, because we've successfully had a little flock of birds in our yard up until recently, when I guess there was a problem. Neighbor had a problem with rats for a short time, and somebody called and found out, oh, we're not, we don't have a half acre, and so therefore we can't have any chickens. We are, the thing that gets me, and I want to be helpful to say, I appreciate the expanded, rules, the allowance for that in our town. We've lived here for like 14 years and love it here. But there's a large area of woods above our property. I don't know if you can see it from here, but the different land areas, there's a large, our neighbors here have almost an acre, and people above us in the woods have like an acre and a half. And we're just having a little difficulty with situation where the way they're written, the rules say that we can't have any hens. But if the whole setup were 50 feet farther one direction on the neighbors had them, in their woods, you know, there would be 13 allowed. And if it was 50 feet another direction on that property, then there would be 7 allowed. You know, and so I'm definitely in favor of trying to do this in a way that would not create problems, not create nuisances, not, you know, be extra noise or anything like that. We've done our best to do it very responsibly. And we had to get rid of them recently, which was really sad. And so I feel like I'd like to see some way that we could, with the layout of the land, get to the point where we could continue doing what we were doing. We had, and
Chad, how much land do you have?
what's that?
How much land?
We
do you
have 0.27 acres,
0.27.
and at the back of our property, it's long and thin. So we've got, you know, we've got this little section here. Our neighbors have this long section here, so both properties are 50 feet wide, the houses are here. And these people up on Johnson Street, their houses are right here, but they happen to own all this long tract of land coming all the way down to the back of our property. All of this is woods, all of this, the Lutheran Church, Grace Lutheran Church. I tuned their piano for like the last 16 years, because I'm a piano tuner. But anyway, all of this woods here is just open space. You know, and so the thing that we're just having difficulties with is that the desire to keep chicken owning from being a problem for neighbors, which I totally support. You know, we're not allowed any here, but right here, these guys could have 13, and right here, they could have 7. And so within a 50-foot radius, there's a huge difference in the numbers that would be allowed to be kept. And so I just basically want to say, you know, I want to find out what could be done so that this could be kind of evened out a little bit, because it seems a little kind of imbalanced a little bit just to go strictly by a property size kind of thing. And then the other thing is, you know, just thinking about, you know, how many of you driven around? I don't know if you've ever driven by a property and seen somebody has chickens. Maybe you've walked by somewhere, and you don't mind them, so nothing is said, you know. And but maybe they're not in compliance either. But it's like, you know, is it a rule across the board, or is it, you know, you kind of under the radar, like maybe a lot of people still are, until somebody reports you, and then that's it, you know. That seems like a little bit of an inconsistency. And so I'm suggesting some ways to see this liberty expanded, but without compromising the protections against neighbors and the quality of life around the other neighborhoods and things like that. So that's, you know, I have more things. I don't know how you guys work this. It's my first time here at a meeting, but I have some examples of some other properties and how it would work with my suggestions. And so that's the thing. I feel like it's a little bit of an unfair bias against owning hens, because it's not that common. You know, if we were talking about dogs or cats or something like that, it's so common, you know. If I were somebody that didn't like dogs and my neighbor had a whole bunch of dogs running around their backyard making noise and doing all kinds of stuff, you know, it's like, it's not going to fly to come and say we need to restrict how many dogs you can own based on the size of your land or the size of your house or, you know, property, or how far the fences need to be and stuff like that. It's just kind of an accepted thing. And, you know, chickens are, when you do them responsibly, like any animal ownership, pet ownership, doing it responsibly can be done very successfully, as we did for 3 years, and nobody had a problem with it. Our neighbors love them. Neighbors on the other side love them. I even have a letter from them saying that. And so that's what I wanted to say.
How many hens did you say you own?
It's varied, because that's the nature of chicken ownership. You know, we started off with maybe 8 or so, At one point, as they start to age a little bit, sometimes you get new ones. And so sometimes you have an overlap where you have young ones and old ones. At one point, we were as high as maybe 18. And then recently, when Ed came by, it was about 11 that we had at that point. We've never had roosters. We don't let them free range, because obviously that's, you know, I mean, like, I wouldn't want a neighbor's dog coming to dig it in my garden or something, so I certainly don't want to let, you know, hens out and go crazy, that kind of stuff either. And so, you know, I read through all the minutes of the discussions again, you know, my bad for not knowing that that was going on. Honestly, if I had known it was going on, I would have been in a quandary, because I'm like, I don't know what would I come out and say? I'm currently, you know, I currently have hens, but it's not legal, but I want you to make it legal so we can. You know, I feel like if we look around, if we drive around and see how many people are doing this successfully, there's no complaints on them. If that's kind of allowed to just kind of go on because nobody's complaining, you know, I'd like to see that be part of the reasoning for expanding this a little further and giving some more freedoms for this. And, you know, I put in the letter, there's a lot of good reasons for owning hens, and they're easy to care for. They don't require a lot of land to do responsibly, and it's very easy to keep them clean and contained and things like that. So.
So with this property, so, go ahead.
You mentioned that there was a rat problem or a mice problem.
Yep.
Was that related to the hens, you believe, or was it unrelated?
There's a lot of reasons you could end up having rats around your property, but one of them is if you have hens and you leave the food out, especially at night, instead of stashing it away, sometimes you can attract rats.
Yeah.
You know, that's part of the thing. And so we had 2 cats that we were indoor outdoor cats, and they did a good job of keeping that down and not being a problem. We see them once in a while at night, and that was it. Our cat died in March. The last one, we had one that died last year, and then one died in March, and then it was almost like within a couple of weeks, we didn't think about it, and within a couple of weeks, we're like, oh no, this is like, because we were seeing them up on our deck and things like that. And I believe that our neighbors on the other side of us, we're having them, and you know, we're like, okay, we totally need to get this under control. We're like, we don't like this any more than our neighbors. So, you know, put some traps out, put the food away, make sure that kind of thing. And it was actually getting quite a bit better. And then, you know, and then we got rid of the chickens. So that was what was going on with that. But over the 3 years, it was never to that point. We had the cats, and we were trying to be careful with the food and all of that stuff. So that's what.
With his property size, you can't have anything.
Our current regulations, which we reduced it down to, was a half an acre of land.
Right.
And, you know, we
Yeah.
discussed
How close
that.
is he?
He's about a quarter acre away. He's at 0.27.
What was the half acre gives him what? Gives him what?
0.5 gives you the ability to have 5.
Five.
Right, 5. And again, you know, none of us were chicken experts, and, you know, we did our best over the many months long that we had our public hearing open, trying to understand it. But, I will say, in defending you, it was a very well-kept area, but the fact of the matter is the regulation is the regulation right now.
Certainly.
You know, and I wouldn't have gone there if there wasn't someone contacting me, requiring me to go there.
Right, exactly.
You know, we don't go out necessarily looking for things on property
Right,
per se, unless it's a major safety issue
sure,
or a health related issue that
right,
generally we find out for various reasons, or we get informed about from public health, fire department, building department,
right,
various things like that, because we have to go and check for those reasons.
yeah,
As I mentioned to your wife on the phone, there are 3 options that I know of. One is commission can address potentially changing the regs. 2, you can, as a citizen, request a text change yourself to it. Or 3, get a variance. The issue with all 3 is, or with 2 of them is financial.
okay,
You know, in the hardship, I don't really know where you'd find one for a variance
right,
that would allow it. And there is a financial requirement to proposing a text change. text changes get proposed all the time by applicants when they're trying to put something in somewhere, and we've done that before, and sometimes the borough has done it. When we've looked at we did a text change basically when we did it, year and a half or a year ago.
Right.
That we've already addressed it. But a person can go before us and request another text change.
Sure.
That would be up to an applicant to do. Those would be the three options that I see, but variance, I
Right,
don't know where a variance is to have a hardship, and I really don't understand. The amount of land, I don't, wouldn't be a hardship per se.
right.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm Ned Fitzpatrick. I'm the borough attorney. Council.
okay.
So listening to you, it raises me a couple of questions. One is for staff. Is the zoning for this gentleman's property and the zoning property in the back, are they two different zones or is it all the same zone?
It's all already.
When we did the regulation, we did not base it on zones anyway.
Right, but I'm wondering, I just want to know if,
But
I'm wondering. If there
It
are
may
different-
change, and there may be a change.
Second question I have is.
It's more of a topography issue as to why that person probably has so much land.
All right, so and that's my next question then is there a way that you may be able to secure either a lease or permitted use from the adjoining property owner of enough square footage to enable you to comprise a half acre?
I'm not sure what the cost portion of that, but if buying another quarter acre off of somebody is out of the question for us right now.
Or you may try to utilize it.
And that's what Ed said when we first talked about it, but that's where I get into difficulties. Our setup is ideal where it's at. At the back of our property, just on the edge of the woods, it's still mostly level. The woods kind of go up a hill from there. And so it's like up in the trees to be over the property line and then to be over by 20 feet.
Okay, so it doesn't mean that you have to utilize it for that purpose. It means that you have the ability, you would have the use of 0.5 acres, which may apply with the intent of the regulation. So,
But if we don't own it, our property is technically.
No, it's your use.
Okay,
It's the use of the property. So there's a possibility that if you have a lease, something that the commission may want to make.
There still may be issues with our regulation where it states how far off the property line you have to be.
Well, those have
Those
to
things
be,
would have to be looked
your
at.
setbacks, everything else has to be compliant. I'm just
Right,
looking at
yeah.
the acreage
right.
provision. And we've done that before with regard to uses where and there are regulations specifically allow uses to go across zone lines. Well, I was asking the question.
Well, is it across property
Well,
lines?
But I don't see why not. I mean, we allow parking, you're allowed to use parking from different areas within a
Yes,
certain number of square feet.
within a
It
certain
doesn't,
distance.
yeah, but it doesn't, we don't control zoning by ownership. It's by use. And so the parking, for example, can be, I think it's 100 feet, is it 100 feet, right? You can.
300, up to, I believe it, you can if you
So-
lease a space.
So the
300
same
feet.
concept.
Yeah.
My thought was, it should be explored to see whether or not that's a possibility for you. That could be a fourth option. I don't know if it's economically feasible for you or prudent, but something you might want to.
Well, that's also something where someone can do it for $1.
Yeah. If
It's
it's
no
not
different,
usable land, then.
it's no different than when the borough we rent the green, for instance,
Right.
for $1 a year from the
Right.
churches.
Okay,
So,
right.
there-
And the thing about that too is under the current regulations, then, a half acre would allow us 5. Well, you have 6 kids and, 5 chickens take it's like the setup takes a certain amount of work and 10 doesn't really change the amount of,
Well, according to
You
this
know-
wording, you can rent more land.
well, yeah.
Well,
So, but that's why I'm going to, and then ultimately, not just for us, but I just feel like, I would love to see I'd love to see it expanded, not just for us. I mean, yes, we would love to be able to go back to owning them the way we did. But I'd like to see it go, further. So, but I appreciate the suggestion and, you know, it seems a little bit of a. I mean, working around things as they are, but,
The commission spent quite a bit of time on that, if you recall.
And-
Remember, we
and-
really
and-
kind of, and I'm just remembering all the meetings, all the public hearings.
If you came, it would have been a little different.
Right, everybody was, there was not considerable expertise, I would say, afforded. Is that a fair statement? I mean, I think everybody was like, gee, you know, I don't keep chickens, I don't keep chickens. We don't, you know, it was, there were a couple of people who appeared, I think.
Yeah, there were a few.
There were probably just as many as for as against.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of people that
There
were
were people against it.
very much.
My suggestion is you start with the fourth option and then consider the zone change. I'm not sure whether commissioner may offer you, but I think what Ed Carter said to you, those three options are also right within your, that are within your right to do those three things as well, so.
To Amin's point, we had probably just as many against as we have before. So we had to be very mindful of the populace as a whole, not just one specific group. So a lot of time was spent in analyzing the information provided. I mean, we had one family that was looking, that had chickens and they had a little over a quarter acre themselves. And they didn't want to get rid of them. They're really pushing for it, but after multiple discussions, the commission couldn't justify going all the way down to a quarter acre. Just because of the properties and concerns that were raised by the people that were against it in totality. There were people against the half acre. They wanted to leave it, I think it was 3 acres before that.
Yeah.
So there was people that were against even getting down to half acre that ultimately was what the value that was passed, so. I would have to, go with Attorney Fitzpatrick, I would recommend one of those other 4 options, otherwise we're gonna be here for another 2 years.
And I would say the same thing. We were trying to be mindful of people who wanted it, people who didn't want it. And to your point about, you know, going under the radar, nobody says anything, you know, you should be fine. But at the same time, if we had Ed go out every day and look at all of our regulations and who's violating our regulations, that's all he'd do, you know?
Certainly.
So, there's no way that we can have eyes on everything. And also for the eyes, or for the people who are doing the right thing, that's great for them, but sometimes they suffer when there's a lot of people that aren't doing that, you know, the right thing. So it's always a balancing act, and where we came from when we first started with the regulation, we came way down. And again, with people for and against, strongly for and against, it was really the commission's responsibility to just try to make a good regulation that everybody or most people could be happy with. It doesn't mean that at some point down the line, the commission can't readdress any of our regulations, including this one. But this is a brand new regulation. And again, it took a long time forming it. So I would say the same thing. I think the options you have before you may not be easy, might cost money. But at this point, I know that I wouldn't feel comfortable changing the regulation to a lower level. And what you were also saying about that you had property around you that would be qualified to have a lot of people. The point is, it's not real property. You know, even though if you have all that open space from other properties, those are other properties. And that's why I think Attorney Fitzpatrick was saying, with all that open property, perhaps, and especially if your neighbors liked it, perhaps they'd be willing to make a deal with you so that you can enjoy it and they could have some eggs. You know, because clearly you sound like you're a good chicken owner. So that's.
One of the things I think we looked at too, which at the end was, we looked at how many properties out there actually were residential zoned that had 3 acres. And remember, I think we found that it was 73.
Mhm.
And we said 73 isn't a lot of residential properties that have chickens, and we know there's a lot more that have them, and probably of this, the 3 acre parcels, probably none of them have chickens.
Right.
And the reality is we started looking down at property sizes, then we went to 2 acres, and I remember getting the maps from our GIS saying, okay, show me how many properties are at least 2 acres. And we started looking at a lot of that. And that's where we were whittling it down.
Mm.
I mean, we did start it, everybody being able to have it, and that got really a big amount of people against it. But we did whittle it down to the ½ acre. And it took time, but we did.
And I think the number of chickens had to do with the waste, around the way. Concerns, especially for a ½ acre, how much waste was generated.
Yeah, we had discussions on that. We had discussions about, chickens are social and they can't just be a few at a time. We had some people that brought some good information at the time.
Right.
They also had the chicken, people were concerned with about the rats.
Right.
That came up.
And that issue remains today.
Yes,
We have several plans that come in my level.
And the free range.
Yeah, you may hear that. I'm seeing the other.
yeah, I see. I do get some complaints on free range. It's not that often, but it's more of a rat issue that I'll get the health department calling me, or the complainant will call based upon the health department telling them to contact me. And then I go out there and some people respond. You were very nice and responded quickly. That's unfortunately not the norm. I'm gonna be honest with you. Usually it's people, I've got one ongoing now for a year. They responded, but they've got other issues going back and forth. So it's unfortunate, but
Neil, you wanna say anything, or you?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Tommy?
No, I'm good.
Reds? Okay.
And I have one other thing to say. I commend you for bringing your family, your kids
like
here
that.
for this process. Because they get to see how things work, and that's really important. So good for you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Sorry.
did you?
Yes, I would.
Larry Knapp, 595 High Street, I am his neighbor. For growing up in Nog, I thought the closest I came to chickens was Pat's Farm. So when they moved next door, it worked out great. They've been great with their chickens, and I'm only, which you know, I'm only 25 feet. My garage is right by the chicken. Have never had issues at all. Of course, my grandchild loves it. But we take care of them also when they're gone. So net, $1, huh? What do you think? I don't know, I kind of go with that if we have to, but, it's worked out really good. I know their piece of property is small, but it's worked out great. And just to let you know, there's been no issues at all, and no free range.
May I ask you, do you know who the property owner is in the back that has that, isn't of the hill? Has there been any contact with that? And we don't need to know for the record, I'm just asking if you know who they are.
Heather and Andrew. They came down and they saw our situation, and they said it doesn't bother them that our coop is there at the end of their property. It just never bothered them that it's been there. And they came down and looked at it, and they said that they like chickens. His mother is a chicken farmer and has many chickens. And he grew up on a small farm. So they're very happy with them. I don't know who called about the rats. It's a little unfortunate because I've given eggs to all of my neighbors, and I try to take care of issues that arise. And it's just unfortunate because I feel like that, the people who are trying to be careful and conscientious end up being the ones that end up following the rules and getting the slap on the wrist basically for doing what they feel like is right. And so I know that's a hard place for you guys to be in.
They do a great job, they really do.
How much acreage do you have?
I have, over, 3/4.
Balance out.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, again, my issue would be how would we word that in regard
I think
to,
that, it would be,
do we have to go by property lines?
so I think what we would do is, I would suggest.
Our
that
regulation has
We call
where
it,
they can be
we
located.
call that option 4 under our discussion. If that's what the consideration is, that should be presented by the property owner, and then staff would take a look at that, we'd review it, and then we would bring it back to the commission. That's the way I see it.
Because I just, unfortunately, their property, and even if they had, if their property extended further back. We have a regulation that says, I think it's 20 feet off the property line.
Yeah.
And they may or may not have that,
Okay, well,
but it's something we can.
it's something you have to look at. It's maybe a possibility.
And that's a possibility with a variance.
I mean, if they were to get letters from the people behind them, because it sounds like that they're friendly enough and they like the chickens.
It's still a regulation.
Yeah, it may help them. I thought your point was that it may help them get the variance. If they have
Well,
if they have neighborhood support, I would say a variance is administratively possible.
Well,
I'm not gonna.
there you can state that the topography of the land is preventing where, there's ways, I've been to there, so there is ways to be able to put it that it might be a hardship to relocate.
If that's that sounds like a basis for a variance application that could well be sustained. So that's maybe, that was option, 3. 5, great.
Well, option
trying.
3 would work with option 4,
Okay.
potentially, but again, we'd have to see measurements and see. So there is potential.
Yeah,
And that would just be an administrative thing on our end, or would it be
Nothing for us.
illegal?
nothing from us, we would go right to CBA. CBA would either deny or grant a variance with or without condition.
Well, I think she's asking if they do the land thing first.
Oh, well, that's different.
They would have to do that first
We would,
to show the agreement.
well, it depends. They may not have to. They can go straight to ZBA.
I doubt they can get a variance based on the size of their land.
You said they couldn't expand either because based on topography.
I said location of the hens being close to a property line.
Okay,
Our regulations state you have to be a certain distance
Right.
off the property.
right.
It has nothing to do with the size of the
Okay,
land.
so the topography is not an issue for the.
Well, the topography would be an issue because it goes uphill from the back. But what I'm saying is, they don't meet the land requirements, but if they make an agreement with a neighbor to
Okay.
lease part of the land next door, to then give them the amount of land, now we need a variance to allow them to keep the chickens where they are because they're too close to the property.
But they do in fact meet the 0.5 acres, so at least they've satisfied the minimum
Right.
acreage requirement.
The
For
hardship
five.
is
For 5.
for 5. The hardship is then based on the topography and where the property line is. And if we're allowing them to lease that land from the neighbor, does the property line go into effect?
Well, that would be an
Because it's a
interpretation.
joint,
The first would be an interpretation by staff.
Right.
That's a staff review. And
because if they've got the use of that land, then that line between them should disappear.
Yeah,
from a use point of view, not from an ownership point of view.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
But for the use of the chicken.
Well, I think that's something staff should review.
And
So that, would that
And
mean
then-
that based on the two said, gentlemen, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. You said your acre, I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Mary.
You said your acreage is 0.9 something, you're just under,
It's just under 3/4.
just under 3/4 an acre, so. I remember the regulations was 5 chickens per half acre and then an additional 5 for every quarter acre above that.
Not 5, but it might have been 3,
3, so then,
2 or 3.
so based on what you're saying, 3/4 plus a quarter, they got a full acre, so they could end up with 11 chickens.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I haven't seen the maps.
Yeah.
There's
They
a
have
lot
to
of
work
things
that
to look at with that, but
Yeah,
I understand what you're
I think
saying.
that's why the burden is on the applicant, I think, really.
Combining the two parts.
As accommodating as. the
Because like you said, it's a use combination, not not an ownership combination.
Right. So I think the answer is,
Granting
the
the
commission
use.
seems willing to be cooperative in assisting you and giving you direction to try to solve this. And it seems like you have some excellent support from your neighbors, and for people to come out and support you in a meeting on a weeknight that's impressive. Because you don't see that very often.
So the ability to perhaps allow,
you know, those
you
are-
would allow them the use of your property too. We combine, now we have an acre of it, and
And
then we'd have to look at location.
so.
I know,
you're-
I know Ken's not looking at that, Ken is trying to make it.
So the agreement would be a legal binding thing, or would it be somebody just writing down on a piece of paper?
I would suggest the staff, once they decide which combination, I have them bring it to staff, suggest it, I'll speak with staff. And if it's going to be use of a land, there should be a lease, just like there is for, when we do projects for parking. When a building here is using parking 300 feet away, we have to see a lease agreement.
I'm just trying to.
That's what I would
Is it
require.
as an attorney thing that it's gonna cost money to do that? I just wanna,
You know, it's a lease of land, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
yeah,
if they
I just
want-
want them to be aware of that.
Yeah, I mean, they would have to have someone do a lease.
Yeah.
And I would review that.
Because it would also include if the neighbors moved.
That's right. Well, then the
And
lease
didn't
would
want
run,
it,
so the lease would run, the other lease would run with a lien.
Right.
And so there's,
But if you have a time frame.
you're right, so you have other things,
Right to renew.
Those are things to be
those
figured
are
out.
all things to be discussed at the staff level at some point. And once it gets to the level where there is a lease, then we can bring back to you, how they work out. Renewable or not renewable, how many monthly, that all. Should all go in that direction.
What I would like to add, just as public comment, that this whole scope might be better handled with a text change. Because if this situation is addressed, other people will want that situation addressed, so I think the text change might be able to handle it for parcels that are
Undersized.
undersized, half an acre, that you need to accomplish these, bullet points, basically, that you gotta be able to garner enough land from your neighbors under lease or some sort of agreement to be able to at least provide that half acre, rather than every time going for a variance. I would rather see a text change.
I would too. I'd like to see this commission retain jurisdiction over the uses. It's normally not good land use policy to have the zoning board of appeals and the land use policy. So what could happen is the commission on its own, your staff would suggest a modification of this provision to allow for that the 0.5 acres may be accomplished, minimum lot acreage size may be accomplished with perhaps the use of adjoining, and I would suggest it have to be adjoining. I don't think it could be within.
No,
It
yeah,
have to be an adjoining property,
And
in
certainly-
a form and context acceptable to the land use staff in the borough area.
And certainly from letters of support from the neighboring.
Well, you can't put that in the zoning regulation, because the zoning regulation can't be contingent on a neighbor support.
It would just it would not require us necessarily to come back every time.
Every single time it happens, we wouldn't have, right, we'd have to come here and we'd keep it away from, I don't mean this negatively, but it would keep those matters from going to see. Where they really. I don't think.
But I don't think this matter would go before ZBA. Right now, if we had that agreement, only because of the location.
Right, but they have a right to apply, see, they have a right, it doesn't mean that they won't, that means they may not. They may not apply here, but they could.
Right, yeah.
So the text change can incorporate the land and also the location, it could be closer to the line if you're incorporating the neighbor's half
Yeah,
acre.
that's right.
So you wouldn't need it.
Yeah, so you'll say that the setback, that the backyard setback, or the boundary line setback does not apply to,
On
acreage.
the common.
Abutting acreage utilized to to satisfy the minimum acreage requirement.
Ted, something you wanna add?
If I may. Yeah, two things. I like the direction of the discussion, and that's what I was, trying to put forth an example of a text change and, you know, the whole process for doing that. But I just wanted to add two quick things. One is that, the thing is chickens don't require a lot of acreage. And so I think that, I think there's, if we look at distances from neighboring structures that are residences, I feel like would be an easier way to do that rather than creating cutoffs of land sizes and things like that. If we have a minimum distance from a neighboring structure, that would eliminate the smallest properties or the layouts or topography where that's not possible. Same thing with property lines, 20 feet off the line doesn't, you know, that doesn't differentiate whether it's 20 feet off the line where somebody has a pool 10 feet on the other side versus 20 feet off the line where it's all woods like we have. But that's the reason I was trying to appeal for a text change, but in a different way than what you guys are saying. I'd like to see it not focus so much on land sizes. I mean, I had some examples of different property shapes and things here. But there's also a document talking about, you know, zoning regulations for farms and agriculture where, you know, looking at minimum property size and things for larger scale operations, it's even that the recommended best practices is, you know, that is problematic because of situations like this and maybe other people like ourselves where the topography, the shapes of the properties, the type of land around it, where are the property lines, how close are the neighboring houses? I think I'd like to see it go another direction with that. Thank you.
The location of the chicken coop was based upon potential odor, potential rats, so that's why we didn't want the ability for people to put something right up against the property line. That's one of the reasons. It had nothing to do with the size of the land. It just simply meant, because we knew, and I had that discussion with all these commission members, that when we made that decision, I came to them and I said, for instance, Tommy Kiernan's property, he has the land to have chickens, but he more than likely doesn't have the location to be able to have them, because the way his land is, he wouldn't be able to put the chicken coop where it could be on the property. So we addressed some of those situations on that it was not based on land, it was based on odor, rats, we have to think of the people that don't do a good job at the chickens, who don't maintain the property.
And also the individuals that own those other properties, they have every right to do whatever they would like on their property as well. So this provided them the free space to have their own open space. So if they decide to put, I don't know, lounge chairs directly on their side of the property, 10 feet in, they don't have chicken coops exactly on the other side. And I understand that you have woods behind you but if that individual decided and, you know, I want to tear down all these trees, and I want to do this, that, and the other, it's their property, they can do what they wish. And now suddenly your chicken coop would become an issue, could potentially. I understand topography and all that, but I mean, we have to remember that the zoning is based on a borough-wide, not just one specific property, but one specific property.
So the reason for the variance that I believe, having been to your property and understanding where your coop is, it's because of the location of the chicken coop. I believe you are within 20 feet of several property lines. Right, and I'm not sure if, I believe you're within 20 feet of the person behind you, potentially, the person on this side of you, and potentially the person on this side. Because of where it's located, because of how your property goes. That's why I was stating that we may need variances to allow you closer than the 20 feet. And I don't think that's something we can address in a text change.
No, my suggestion is if there's language that, ideas that the applicant has, gentleman has, that he should review those all with you, staff, and then we'll just figure out if there's a proposed amendment. If it feels that it might want to look at it itself to address that, or a budding or adjoining property issue, which logically makes sense to me. I don't know if that's the chair and the members, but You know, that's something that perhaps.
But in this
the
case
commission
here,
might-
if he is
might
too
answer.
close to 3 properties,
Well, that's
he
another
would
issue.
need 3 agreements.
He he may need other,
Well,
That's
other,
all.
he may need, depends on what the text change he's seeking is. And, if that, it can't satisfy the zoning requirements, then he would need, relief, he need variances. And
Let me
that's,
answer this question.
well, he
Yeah,
get.
the coop that you have currently, if you were to move it, let's say, you do come to an agreement, and you were to move that, so you're outside the 20-foot distance from the 2 other people, is there an area there that you could do that in? Meaning,
Is on our property, there isn't, because down from where it is our driveway. And then the other problem is our property is 250 feet by 50 feet. So 20 feet off the sidelines, it gives you only a 10-foot
yeah,
channel
but
down
if
the middle.
if you're closer to, because we were talking about use, not ownership, so that property would essentially become a part of your use, so the one property line
Yeah,
would disappear.
if
So you
that
would no longer
disappears,
have
right,
that. You would now be well over 20 feet from the next
That,
property.
that is the question I was asking.
so if that were the case, there's only one section where there's like a fence here and the property line, the neighbor property kind of comes down, there's like one section where it would be 5 feet. Because of the little jog in the shape of our property, everything else would be more than 20 feet at that point. But it's like one little section because of the funny little, you know, right angle draw.
That makes sense. No, yeah, I see it on your letter, you had a picture of it there.
Yeah.
We can talk further.
Right, we good? So you guys will meet with that and hopefully we'll come up with a solution that fits everybody. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm still going to, entertain this exchange, evaluate this particular situation, is documented for future use, I mean, that was.
I think that's a question that you guys have.
I think that way, let them, I think let them meet with that and then.
Work through the process once and then see how it goes and go from there. Yep, makes sense.
On the other thing, too, is the text change, you know, how would it affect other properties that try to do the same thing? Are we gonna run into a big problem?
That's why you need, I suggest going to staff level first, see what it comes out of these discussions and I.
Is it-
And we understand the process.
It might be, it might be whittling us down from where we got to after a year, and
Right.
I'm not sure.
And the question about the additional budding property, I don't recall that being a subject of top of our 1.5 years of discussions of this, so it might be something worth discussing, it's not something that you have to agree on either.
And the first 2 might be worthwhile talking to you.
No, I don't disagree. We've been working through a couple of them at first just to see what shapes up and then go from there. I was just curious.
Okay, good luck.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your family's been exceptionally well behaved.
Yeah.
They're great neighbors.
Just like their chickens. Hey, guys.
We're all gonna get eggs tonight.
By the way, it is awesome.
Yeah,
that's nice.
Thank you.
all right, where are we? So we have no open business, no old business. New business, commission discussion, presentation with Savannah Nicole Villaba.
Well,
Am I saying that? Of the Norfolk Valley Council of Governments in regards to outdoor dining regulation changes. How do we say your last name?
Yeah.
All right.
and you have her presentation.
Yes, so thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Commissioners. As Ed said, you have the presentation in front of you. It's the cut off paper, little tiny. And then you also have a land use brief, which is a short form document that the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments put out to help guide in understanding the legislative changes around outdoor dining. So we're gonna go through the presentation. The land use brief is just a resource for you to have to get a little bit of a feel of what was going on. And the first front page is La Casita from your town planner, Lori. So I'm happy to represent Naugatuck Front and Center on that document for our region. So we'll look at the PowerPoint to start.
It's just on paper.
Yes, unfortunately, just paper tonight. My
We're not that
apologies.
official tonight.
Yes. So on the,
Change the slide,
There's also no one on Zoom, which is the first.
Yeah.
Lori,
Probably there last week.
yes.
Yeah, they were all the last ones.
thank you.
So on that front page, you see just the introduction and then what we're gonna go over tonight. We're gonna talk about accessory outdoor food and beverage services in Naugatuck. We'll go over the new section of the statute, section 8-1 PC, and then there'll be an opportunity for questions and answers if that is something that the commission is interested in. So now we'll go to the next page. Ed kindly provided me with a bit of history into Naugatuck's current outdoor dining regulations. And so it's interesting that Naugatuck was considering outdoor dining since at least 2014 and potentially even prior to that. And you can see that because on that slide 3, it was mentioned in a recommendation from the zoning commission to the board of mayor and burgesses to allow for seasonal outdoor dining areas to sell alcohol in the borough's sidewalks. I'm not sure if this was ever adopted. It's that little section 3 that you can see on the right side of slide 3, because it's not in the current code of ordinances, but this shows you that Naugatuck has been ahead of the curve in thinking about outdoor dining for a while. On that slide 4, which is still on your page 2, the current form of Naugatuck's outdoor dining was established in 2015 and made effective in 2016. Ed gave you a copy of that current regulation. I just provided, as Ed gave me, the fancy document when it was adopted in 15. And as stated, the regulation recognized that outdoor sidewalk dining is an amenity that promotes both pedestrian traffic and the borough of Naugatuck. And the regulations implemented in 2016 appear to be what your current form that you have today is. So we're gonna go now to the page 3, and it made more sense when I had the presentation, so I'm giving you both the teaser and the answer on the same slide, but Ed and Laura can tell you that sometimes I have a bad habit of burying the lead, and I don't want to do that in the interest of all of your time tonight. So after reviewing your current regulations in consistency with section 8-1 CC, it's my professional opinion, as you can see on slide 6, that Naugatuck is a regional best practice. Your foresight in section 44.1.4 is commendable. It is a fabulous regulation that you guys have in front of you. And so I now have a few slides that provide context into the history of how section 8-1 CC was implemented. And then I have the nuts and bolts of the statute. But in the interest of your time, we don't have to go into the nuts and bolts if you're not interested tonight, because your regulations are in an extremely strong place. And so I've had conversations with Ed, and Ed has suggested that him and I offline at a later point. And if there are any suggested recommendations to your section 44.1.4, that Ed can bring them forward at another night. So you'll have the presentation, you'll have the brief, we can go through the nuts and bolts after we talk a little bit about history, or you can send me on my merry way, and you have my card, you have Ed, you can do either.
Commissioner? And they're on our merry way.
But I also know I can talk forever, so.
I will just say.
They got a
this.
good handle on it. They got a good handle on it.
When they refer to selling of alcohol, it just means that they can have a table and they can't put a bar outside. So when we do have our festivals downtown and some of the restaurants do put bars outside, they actually have to submit stuff to the state of Connecticut for that, because they're actually running a bar. But it's when someone, even, yes, every single time we have a festival, all these restaurants have to come in. If they're setting up a bar outside, I have to sign off, the building inspectors sign off, the fire marshals sign off, and we keep the forms there, because it goes to alcohol.
Yeah, it's
With the state as an outdoor, as a one-day permit for them to sell outside. But the fact of this all came about that the state wanted the ability to be able to have tables outside. Someone orders a glass of wine, the waiter can bring it out to them.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, if I can keep you for 4 more slides. I can give you the history and then you have the nuts and bolts
Okay.
if that could be beneficial
Go ahead.
to Ed's point. So yes, this was initiated through Executive Order number 7MM, which was enacted during COVID, so May 12th, 2020. And it was implemented because they were trying to facilitate limited economic development activity during the pandemic. We saw what it was doing to businesses. And so the beginning and the conception of what we now see in 8-1 was in that executive order. And so what I provided for you on page 4, little slide 8, I found some resources from the National Restaurant Association, and it appears that nationally, doing things like Executive Order 7MM were really beneficial to restaurants. This was a survey done nationally of 4,000 restaurant operators in September 2021, and it shows you what percentage of daily sales for restaurants were comprised of outdoor dining. And I learned this today. Full service is restaurants that accept reservations or walk-ins and host seat guests. Limited service restaurants don't accept reservations and guests seat themselves. So while this is a national survey, it just gives you a little taste about the fact that outdoor dining really did play a significant impact during COVID in helping businesses maintain their viability. So that leads you to page 5, and that's slide 9. While the National Restaurants Association's numbers just give that broad perspective, it was clear that it did something in Connecticut too, because Public Act 2201 was passed during the 2022 legislative session. And that shows us that there were lasting benefits. There was a reason why the legislature said, oh, outdoor dining is good for our businesses, is good for our pedestrians, is good for our communities. And I found a few other resources that you could see on that 10, still same 5, that from, again, the National Restaurant Association, that as you can see on this left side, and across all sectors, 9 in 10 operators plan on continue to offer outdoor seating and outdoor dining. That's a 2023 from the association that represents businesses. It's obviously not Connecticut or Naugatuck specific, but it gives you a little taste about that this is something that the restaurant association, the restaurant businesses are saying has been really positive for that. And then on that right side, you can see that 7 in 10 operators have offered some type during the last 3 years, probably related to a lot of the executive orders that are now sticking around. And it says here that they're going to keep them. This was a good thing. It was good for our communities, our region. And so I thought this one is also interesting. It highlights, again, it's a national study, but about 70% of adult respondents like having outdoor dining as an option. It's really wonderful to walk down your street and see the liveliness of people sitting outside, or, you know, you can get a meal on a beautiful day. So I wanted to kind of just provide a little context about, it started as an executive order to help your businesses, but it really has been beneficial on a municipal, on a regional, on a national level. And now we're at the point where CGS section 8-1 CC is effective. It's effective come May 1st. And so the executive order and what was in that is gone, but now you have this new version that has been codified in 8-1. And what I was doing is when I looked through the regulations, when I looked through the statute, you're in a very, very strong place. If I thought that there were significant recommendations based on what the statute said that maybe you should move a little quicker to get an amendment in, I would have called Ed and said, Ed, we gotta get some PowerPoint slides we gotta talk about. But I like when I can come and say, as a regional planner, that when someone calls me about outdoor dining, I can direct them to your regulations. And usually we're not in that place. So this has been wonderful to research into and to work with Ed on. And I look forward to helping or assisting on future projects that I can provide a little capacity on in the future, including aquifer protection, which we're working on together. So we're gonna get there. And I won't go further, but I provided you with all the sections of the statute so you can read it line by line in reference to your regulations. It's in the brief as well, but I know you still have things before you tonight. And
My question that threw me off a bit on this is, we have this in our alcoholic beverage section. So we should be doing the same thing for Nardelli's that we're doing for La Casita.
They don't sell alcohol over there.
but it's outdoor dining, and the outdoor dining doesn't, so are you telling me that if you don't if you don't sell alcohol, you can just automatically put tables and chairs outside?
That was the intent, I think, originally when they did this back in.
Was based on
60s,
alcohol,
based
I
on
understand that.
alcohol.
But the outdoor dining regulations are not based on that.
No, it might be beneficial then to pull it out of alcohol and give it its own section.
Accessory use.
Yes.
And our accessory use under past chickens, and then the next section of the that.
So that was my concern, because I said, well, why do I have to go have Nardelli's? I mean, I just saw recently that the Maple Street Bakery put 2 little tables and 2 chairs outside. And I'm like, well, do I have to now go and get them to get the insurance indemnity clause and do, you know, all that we were, I was doing it based on the liquor stores. Because again, the concern, Ricky, you were on the commission, then Neil was on the commission, then your issue was someone getting drunk and throwing a chair through a car,
And in that instance.
you know, back then.
So, but 8-1CC allows that by statute. Yes, we have our, maybe our regulation and norms and statute, but it's already allowed, permitted by statute, so it's not, you don't have to have alcohol in the dining to allow there to be outdoor dining on sidewalks and out sidewalks and pedestrian pathways, right,
Yes.
the way I read the statute.
Correct, Ed could make an enforcement or interpretation just based on the
Right,
statute, but if
state
you
laws.
wanted to add it to your regs.
Yeah, if you wanna be consistent, we could do it, but it's not a,
In other words, do I have to go down to Nardelli's and say, okay, you
No.
gotta fill out a form here?
are you having everybody else do that?
We haven't had people do it, during COVID because it became so popular during COVID. Now, prior to that, we did have restaurants that had alcohol who wanted to be out, we did it with restaurants who had alcohol.
Yeah, I think everything's.
But it was, you know, that we would get,
I mean, the good news
because there was
here-
the insurance
here-
indemnity clause and all
Yeah,
that.
but the good, that's right, but the good news here is that there's no statutory violation, okay, so there's no violation of any state law for Nardelli's or some of them you mentioned.
Well,
Serving outside on pedestrian pathways,
Right.
there's no violation of state law.
I mean, if Domino's wanted to put something outside, or an ice cream shop, or somebody wanted to put something outside, a table and a chair, do I have to go now because it's on public land? Do I have to go and get them to fill out a form?
Well, that's different than whether or not it's allowed.
But it's allowed, but
It's allowed by state law, but I mean, can we ask them? We want some identification, so you understand what the question is?
Yes, and
Okay.
so to the original question about what happened during COVID, this is Public Act 2101, section, the first full section of this is about the COVID specific regulations that were really conceived of in 7MM, where that's where Ed's getting at, where you could draw on the back of the napkin where you were gonna put the outdoor dining, you couldn't require a site plan, you couldn't require architectural review. However, all of that sunsetted as of
2 months
April.
ago, or-
Yeah. And so to your question, that says that if you have a food establishment that is a permitted use and has been permitted for, you have to allow the accessory dining as of right. And so whether you want to make that a zoning permit that Ed does, the way that it is in your current regulation, or you want to make it a site plan approval, which again, doesn't have a discretionary component to it. Those are 2 paths you can take. To the question of indemnification, in the purpose of where the regulation sits in alcohol, if the indemnification was specifically focused on the concern around liquor or alcohol, then it may be worth amending the regulations to Lori's point of having an accessory outdoor dining with another line that says that that indemnification is only required for those that are going to use alcohol or going to serve alcohol. We don't need that sort of protection from Nardelli's or Maple Street Cafe.
So that's something the staff should discuss, that's a staff discussion,
Yes.
maybe a commission discussion, but again, that's a substantive matter, and
Yes.
should there be a distinction?
well, by the fact that we're keeping it under the alcohol.
Yeah, but should there be a distinction? Yeah, but should be required. So it's borough property. So I see where people slip and fall, get tripped. They say the sidewalk is improper,
Yeah.
and if it doesn't go to the insurer, it comes to me first, and I see it, and I say, we got solid this. The pipe was sticking up, and somebody tripped and broke their leg. I mean, and it turns out.
Someone
turns out-
fell on some food.
Yeah, a banana peel that you left out. So, yeah, I mean, those are, those are things that happen, so we want the indemnity for those reasons. It's not just because someone might take a chair and throw it through a car, or
Well, we
get
have,
drunk and, get drunk and touch somebody. It's-
we have clothing stores that put clothing outside. We have, you know, I mean, how much are we gonna regulate? I mean, if are we really worried about
Using
our
the
delis?
the
Couple
rule
of
is,
tables and chairs out there, if they start putting umbrellas up and they start.
they're
to build the
using
whole side-
borough property, anybody uses borough property has to, that we know about, it's usually required to sign an identification, hold arm screen, and provide with insurance.
So a place like G Burgers wouldn't qualify for that.
Correct.
If it's on his.
It's on their property.
But what if
Popeyes would
someone
be okay.
buys something from somebody, you sit on one of the borough benches? You eat on the sidewalk on the borough
Borough
bench?
property, you're,
Yes.
that's borough property, that's not their, but they're not using the property, you're taking your lunch and going.
Right.
It's not that, they're not serving it.
If I'm eating outside at Martelli's and I drop a whole bunch of coleslaw on the ground, somebody walks by and slips and busts their butt because I dropped the food that I just bought from Martelli's,
It's still open.
they'll come after Naugatuck.
Right.
Either
And our delegates do very proper supervision, proper maintenance or
The
janitorial.
point of it is just that if somebody gets injured due to the services you're providing,
Right.
Naugatuck is a
Right, non-alcohol related.
non-alcohol.
To get them.
My guess is the risk is probably a little greater with alcohol. That would be my guess. I don't have any personal.
I'm just trying to understand the difference of where, you know, we've got restaurants that do serve alcohol downtown. And then we have places that don't, and it's like, how much are we over regulating these places that, you know, it's.
Most of the time, so if they haven't, if they haven't, they have to have insurance for their business.
Correct.
And they have an insurance policy for the interior.
Right.
For them to cover the boroughs and add us as either an additional insured or to add us to their policy on the liability side. It's nothing.
It doesn't cost me, I
Nothing,
understand it, it's
nothing.
just another
I know, but it's
oversight.
All it's gonna take is just one individual though. One individual gets hurt at the wrong time and decides to have, that it's payday. And next thing you know, the borough's in a lawsuit for millions.
And don't forget, we're gonna be, the whole region is gonna be under construction for the next
30 years.
Well, right, but I would say the infrastructure will be disrupted probably for the next 2 to 3 years.
How does it work with food trucks on Firehouse Road? They're using our property.
Oh, I assume they have, I don't know.
They don't come to the town, they go to the police department.
Oh, so the police department has them probably sign
There's just a.
I don't know, no, I'll bet they have,
There's a permit.
I bet there's a permit and
Yeah.
an insurance requirement, I'm sure there is.
I don't think there's an insurance requirement, but I think there's just a permit that they.
Maybe we should find out.
Because we've had that discussion with them, because I've said you can't be in the municipal lot, but you can be in a parking spot. On Firehouse Road. Because they'll take over the lot with tables and chairs. I mean, I see a guy setting up recently with tables and chairs all on Firehouse Road with his food truck.
See him every day?
Yeah.
Or somebody else just like, I don't know who's doing it.
Should we get indemnification there? And who's
If he's
responsible?
using borough property, then he should have an insurance policy.
Well, I think you
That
need to
doesn't
have a
have a
discussion with the mayor.
I think you're the right person for that.
I think it's borough council explaining the legalese.
I think it's bringing order to the, you know.
Yeah, we are kind of like doing it as we go along, but wasn't it interesting to hear someone who has experience to say that we had a little foresight. How often does the commission get complimented for some of the work it does? I'm not sure if I.
I love how you had foresight, but you keep talking about it, you realize everything's all messed up.
There's little tweaks. There's tweaks that have to be done.
We keep talking about Neil's gonna get hungry.
I already got food on order.
Thank you for
All right,
your.
thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank
All right.
you.
And if you have questions, you can send them through Ed, but I also gave you my business card, so feel free also to email me as well.
All right, excellent.
Thank you.
This
Thank
gave me
you,
more.
Sharon.
Thank you.
Good job.
We'll get through it
Great.
together.
All right. Next, the commission discussion approval for a site plan application to the special permit for the Naugatuck Industrial Commons Tag Site 280 Elm Street application 1911. You do that?
Thank you.
So as you know, I mentioned this special permit, we had approved the special permit for an industrial park down on the Langston, now borough property on, that's roughly 86 acres down on Cherry Street, Elm Street area. And we would be coming back eventually with approval for pad sites.
This for the, so.
No, this is actually for a contractor job.
Is that the company that's, on Rubber Avenue right now?
Yeah.
All right, I think we're in. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Wayne Zrolli. I'm a licensed land surveyor and civil engineer in Connecticut. My residence is 404 Beach Street, Litchfield, Connecticut. So we're here tonight to discuss this proposed project. This is lot 2 of the Lanxess subdivision, which is proposed to be sold to International Framers LLC. One of the principals is Anthony Gallagher, the applicant. So this application is for a construction yard and material storage. The applicant proposes to construct 2 steel buildings on the site. The larger one, closer to the south end, is proposed to be 80 by 320 feet and encompassing 25,600 square feet. The smaller building, basically in the middle of the site, is a 60 by 170 foot steel building comprising 10,200 square feet. These buildings will be on slab, so the foundation will just be knee wall foundation. The site is very flat. It's a former parking lot for Uniroyal. Portion of the parking lot on the south end is still utilized by Lanxess. They will be leasing it for a period of time, and then they will be vacating it when Lanxess leaves. And International Framers will use that parking area for their building, and eventually they might come back for a proposed retail section of the larger building facing Spencer Street. But that's not under consideration tonight. Site is flat. It was, and it still is, paved. The pavement is very old, cracked. At this point, my client does not have plans to repave it, possibly in the future. I have not depicted any drainage on the site. We could do that. Here again, it's flat. Other than putting the buildings on it, we weren't proposing any grade changes. So I've got, I'm in receipt of review from the engineering department, Jim Stewart, and a review from Ed Carter's office, which came today. I was out in the field today, so I just got copies of these tonight. So I will be addressing the items on both of these reports. Nothing is outlandish or very difficult to meet. Some of them are notes, actually some are notes that were already in the application, but I'll clarify them on the plans and address all the concerns that both Ed and Mr. Stewart have. Also, Jim Stewart said we've got to appear before WPCA. I wasn't sure if we need to go before WPCA because this is just a lateral to the building. It's not a sewer extension.
Yeah, they want everyone, any commercial connections to get approved by them.
Okay, so we will be going to WPCA this coming month before this next zoning meeting. Let's see, here again, some of the other comments. So I made this, both the erosion control plan and the site plan. If necessary, I can separate that out although there's not much for erosion controls, I do, depict, sediment erosion control fence, below each building. Here again, the site is flat, other than, digging the foundation, for both buildings. There's not much sediment that's gonna be migrating anywhere. But I'll get together with Mr. Stewart. Lighting, we'll get a lighting plan, all the lighting, and I thought I put a note on, but apparently I didn't. All the lighting, that's proposed is on the buildings, and it'll be down lighting, but I'll get a lighting plan. Landscaping, I don't really know where we put landscaping. There's the only portion that's really, exposed to the public is really this parking lot. I can do some planting enhancements there. Behind the site, this site is like 15 to 20 feet below the Ward Street properties, so this is a steep bank along here. They did cut some of the weeds there, so I could probably put some plantings there. As far as, this side of the site, and again, it drops off from the parking lot. It's very steep, and it's, shaded or shielded pretty much from Elm Street with vegetation, so I'll depict all that on the plans. And then, the plan will be back next month. Okay.
I sent my review today. I received this just before I went on vacation last week, so I didn't get much of a chance myself to see it till this week. But I did make some notice in this, that you can read about, that the setback is met with these buildings with the additional requirement. That this does only require a site plan approval in an I2 zone for this type of use. It doesn't need a special permit process. There are some recommendations of whether the fire marshal should review this for truck access and whatnot. That would not be required automatically for special permit, but site plan it's not. Lori can present a wetlands report, but there's no wetlands within 800 feet of this. Yeah, in regard to that, I don't think there would be a need to go before the police commission at all, for any reason. But, and then architectural, Wayne did provide a basic drawing tonight to us. But under site plan review, we are still the architectural review and have the ability to look at a building.
Right, and the architect is working on the plans, but they're not complete yet.
What are the materials?
Basically,
Steel buildings.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an industrial park, it's an industrial zone, it's not a traveled area that even anybody uses right now.
Yeah.
Other than the trucks going down to
The sewer plant.
the sewer plant.
Well, they cut off this form where it's gonna be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this isn't necessarily a big public access by
No,
any means to go down there. I think the most famous thing is that Tom Cruise slept there during War of the Worlds.
Where? He did.
Yeah, they had his trailer
In
on
the
it.
weeds, trailer.
You didn't.
War of the Worlds, he was there filming for
I
2 or
thought you
3
were the one
days.
who recorded that, didn't you?
You were right.
Really?
Yeah, War of the Worlds, you look
No,
at
that
two
was
stacks,
the
that's there and stuff, that was all down there.
I gotta watch the movie again.
Yeah, that's Naugatuck, where it's getting blown up.
It's yeah,
The tunnel, all that's there.
it is there. I have a question for Wayne just about the, so the piece, there's a piece that's the revised lot line. So we're going, the plan is to convey these little pieces to this property, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether the plan was to actually convey the pieces to each property owner, which would be
I think
logical.
I think that's what the borough wants to do
Yeah.
here. So what I'd like you to do is to, if we're taking it out,
Yeah, you want me to divide them up?
give me the numbers, you can get me those, cause I'll end up preparing deeds for all of these, I think.
Oh, yeah, well,
And-
I'll end up giving
If you
you,
notice too, in the middle, the borough is retaining the cell tower.
Yeah, that's the other thing I was gonna mention, is that, so there's a cell tower on the site, we're retaining we're retaining the cell tower, so we're retaining access and egress to that, so we get in and out of it. And we're also retaining rights to that. The
And where
income,
is that?
the revenue stream on that cell tower, it's right when you drive.
Right behind the second building, the 60 by 170, you'll see there's a parcel we retained.
Yeah, it's right here.
It's a cell tower.
So you, when you're coming down Elm, you can go right up this driveway, and you'll see the tower, you go up and enter into the whole area, it's on your left. If you're driving up from Elm, it's right there, you'll see the cell tower, you can't miss it.
I'm not real familiar. I think I've been in that area once. And it's a mess. I mean, it's overgrown. And
Yes.
yes, there's concrete, but it didn't seem like it was real drivable concrete or asphalt for trucks, because it's gonna be a lot of trucks coming in and out with lumber, right?
Yeah, it's flat, here again for the yard.
Actually, isn't there a bunch of rubber tires on it now? Or was?
I didn't see
No,
the tires,
no.
I didn't see them when I was there.
Or they, but they might have been gone. When International Framers right now has got wood there now,
I didn't see the tires there.
but they were there before.
Oh, man, many years ago, I think, I don't know, I don't think
Yeah,
recently.
This wasn't the
I
tire.
walked the dog around here this year.
No,
I
they
didn't
were
see tires.
up the top.
They're up there.
That's right, the tire lot was up, yeah, it was.
My trailer's right up
That's
there.
right.
Okay.
So you're gonna clear the whole property?
No, it's already cleared.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a giant parking
They're
lot.
really not, other than plunking in 2 foundations, there's really not a lot of site work to be done.
Eileen, if you took a little ride, just right around,
I would have
by
to, I've not been-
Ward Street or down up Elm there, you can drive right up, you'll see all the wood, they have all,
There's
a lot of their
a
materials.
temporary sign showing you.
Yeah, there's a little sign, you'll, right away you'll get it, it's very flat, it's like this table.
These buildings are just for storage?
Basically, yes,
Or they're gonna
to
have
store their materials.
workshop in or build?
I don't, other than loading and unloading, I don't think they do a little bit of fabrication probably, but not a major amount. It's mostly for the materials.
You would never notice this property unless you went to dig to find it, because you really have to.
Because it's not on a
Rick,
given road.
Rick, how do you get?
So we
Yeah.
don't have to be concerned about landscaping across the top, or will it be visible from 84?
No, you can't
No.
see, no, you can't see.
Okay.
Just over by Lexus.
I mean, Route 8, I'm sorry.
No.
Even, yeah.
The properties behind it, they're higher.
The properties behind it
They're all
are
those
higher
properties.
and the road is much lower.
Yeah,
that's not
So
what
it's.
So
and
even
it's
the
already
lighting
treed, so if
be
you-
below.
it shows
I
the
mean, I would
existing
probably-
tree lines.
I would probably wanna plant trees in front of the. you know,
Right, yeah, so
in front of
I'll,
the entrance, yeah, where the entrance is, I would do that, and everything else.
yeah, so Friday I'll take my site plan down there and review all the
Right.
questions that
So all of
everybody.
yeah,
these
like here.
properties won't be
Like
affected
here,
with
that's right, because.
visually
you can't see
seeing
that.
these.
No, at the
They're-
most,
they're up
they're
here.
looking at the.
They're higher.
They're up here, I think, and maybe some like this, but we're gonna give them those
Yeah,
strips. Because
Okay.
the people need it for their, whatever they're doing, some of them have fences here and.
I mean, it's way up.
The land actually went, it was like this
Yeah.
and then went up and a little bit onto the
Yeah.
top. So there's just, it's all their backyards.
It helps us it helps us resolve helps us resolve some property encroachment issues, and so this is a good opportunity also to clean up in a
Yeah.
legal way
And many of these cases, these homeowners have been maintaining it.
for 30, 40, 50 years.
They have fences up to it
Yeah.
and it's,
Well, there's an existing chain link fence
yeah.
along the whole border of the property. The whole western portion of the property. And it's probably 100 years old, or more than 100 years old, but a very sturdy, heavy gauge chain link fence, 6 feet tall. For the most part, right on the property line.
If you drive Ward Street, a couple of the vacant properties there, you can see it.
You can see it, yeah. Yeah, so. With the proposed, transfer of the property, I adjusted the proposed property line to where the existing fence is now. So that, we wouldn't have to move the fence, but the property line will be coincident with the location of the fence in that one area there. Because there's a jog,
Does Borough own all of this
yes,
right now?
yes, they do.
Okay, we're gonna try to do this, we're gonna try to close on this property by the end of the fiscal year, so.
Yep.
Okay, so,
I got my marching
you're,
orders.
let's go.
They will need a 8-24 too.
Yeah, I think they already did this, didn't we do this a while ago?
To the planning commission.
Didn't we do this?
We already have one on it.
Yeah, we did it before. We've already done one.
For the June meeting.
Oh, okay, it's on for June, okay,
But
good.
they call it 207 because Fred assigned a street number.
Oh, it's the
280,
address?
The whole thing is 280, 87 acres of 280.
Yeah.
So this is, I think, 207.
But now they're splitting up as separate
I think
parcels.
that's what it is. I'll let you know. for sure.
Has the lot line revision been filed with that? Or that'll be done after?
No, that'll be
We
done
can do
after.
that simultaneous.
Yeah.
with The.
Yeah, I'll get you the areas and then if you need legal descriptions for each of them,
I will, and we'll need, and then, I can, some of the property owners have already contacted me, so I can. They haven't seen these. They haven't seen the executive government grant, but they know it's coming.
Yeah.
All right, we'll coordinate that, that's not pretty something, that's one
Okay.
thing I wanted to get you,
probably the best thing is if I do a little disposition map for that,
that would be even better,
along with the legal description.
it would be even better.
All right, sounds good. So I'll address all the comments. And then, I'll see you folks next month.
And you'll head to WPCA and. police-
WPCA.
I'm sorry, the fire and the fire marshal anyway.
Right, I wasn't sure if land use, give them the plan, or if you want me to give them the plan.
What do you want? What would you like?
Why don't you go directly to them? Because-
And then,
Yeah, so that he can, if he needs a review of it, you can explain it to him better than we can.
Yeah, I would just say, Wayne, just define your storage areas clearly.
right, I saw that.
Because they spread their wood out a lot.
Yeah.
So that you know that when he sees it, he knows where he can drive, there's nothing gonna be showing up in the middle of this path.
Okay,
And you'll provide some significant landscaping along the entranceway, the lead up into that access, right?
yeah, it's kind of like a tunnel out there.
Well, yeah, it's
But if we could do some plantings down around here,
You can clean that up a little bit there, it's all over wrong.
I'm sure they're gonna put a sign there
Is
too.
there a sign on it?
there is
On
a,
the foot-
There is a
It's
little
fine.
sign.
The one that they have there now, or are they?
The one that
put
they
a
have now, I
nicer
don't know.
one?
They didn't express any wishes to change that sign,
They
but
can do that later. That's. Right, it's so far off, it's off the beat.
I didn't know.
They're one of the largest companies.
I know, I couldn't believe it.
In the world.
They're big,
For-
I walked up the driveway.
they have a huge operation, they're in California, Ireland, they're big players.
We're still gonna keep River Avenue, Wayne?
Yes, as far as.
Yeah.
Double header?
East River Avenue for what?
They're all- they have all-
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, we sold it.
Yeah,
Yeah. They're significant in their field.
good.
All right.
All right, thank you all.
Good seeing you, Wayne.
Thank you.
Pretty good, Wayne.
All right. Ed, any report,
nothing tonight.
commissioners?
I'm happy to report that is now up at Popeyes.
Oh, the tea's up?
We got the tea up today.
That's been stuck in her throat
I know,
forever,
I
right? It's
get
like
it.
everything drove by.
That must mean they're ready to open.
Oh, you're getting
Missing
there.
the tea.
I lost count of number of times they dug up that driveway.
But the egg fell down.
So wait, how close are they?
No, and then.
Wow.
This one, Ben is Jim.
Wow.
All I know is I better love that chicken, that's all.
It is.
Chick-fil-A's coming.
No way.
Do we have anybody on Zoom? Anybody on?
No.
No?
I have
No
no-
public comment?
I wanted just to announce that the Arts Commission, the summer concert series on the Green, start June 27th. They kick off on June 27th, so every Tuesday from June to August. The first is Simply Swing, is the first lineup. They have Naughty Boys, Maestro Man, Les Mix, Stiletto, CT Rakes, Orquesta Finque, which is a salsa band, Sun Kings is Beatles band and that's.
When's the Soul Food one?
August 15th.
All the big wigs.
So yeah, every Tuesday from 7 to 9 on the green, and if it rains, the
Guaranteed to rain.
auditorium.
When did they end?
Just before Labor Day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the last concert is August 22nd. And then we have the Harvest Moon Festival on September 15th, and the Spanners are playing.
It's not the spinner.
Not the Spinners, the Spanners.
The only Neil would even understand what I'm saying. He's the only, wait,
Did you see Tina Turner died?
Yeah.
Who?
Tina Turner.
Oh,
really?
83.
Today.
Yeah. Too bad we can't get the spinners.
You have anything there?
No, I'm good. Well, we are planning to have an executive session out at the next
Okay.
meeting, and I'll have a discussion with all of you then, the following on the last discussion. And that is,
Yeah, we do have a public hearing next month.
there is a
where-
public
where we
hearing
discuss
in connection with this matter,
With
and
your
you'll have that, and then we'll
to allow
probably.
Tri-Tech America.
Oh, right.
So we may have a little executive session before or after, or maybe not at all, it may not be necessary, but I think we're already sort of. We're already in the loop. We may have a very short executive session on that.
All right.
Not tonight.
Commissioners, anything else?
Yeah, I gotta, these chicken people are bothering me. If it's a hardship on a family. No way, huh?
You're asking me legally? Doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that, sometimes it's not, it doesn't mean it won't get approved. What I'm saying is. If they ask me if that's a legal hardship, I would have to say no, so probably wouldn't go to that meeting. And, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how compelling, yeah, I get it.
I know. That's all.
If we could zone for all nice people.
Yeah,
Yeah, or
I know
people
that.
secondary.
There'd be no book.
Yeah, take care of that.
I mean, the issue here is that the road, they live on, you get to their house through Cohen Street.
They're on this.
So even though they're on High Street, you drive down Cohen Street, you go at the end where the church is,
yeah.
and then you go, there's like 3 houses, so that road, that driveway goes through those people's properties back there. And it was unfortunate, they had a new neighbor who made a call in regard to getting some mice. And the chicken, like I said, the chicken coop was well maintained and taken care of, but they didn't meet the land requirements. But it's also very tight where they are. I mean, he's got 50 feet wide property. You know, we're saying it's gotta be 20 feet off of each side. Well, you can't do that in 50 feet.
Yeah.
And that's what I was
Have to
saying, and
cut- have a line
he's
somewhere.
right on and I understand that the people that live above them are all on Johnson Street and have huge properties because they all go down the hill.
Oh,
And that's what it is, and I understand those people behind it, they don't care, they never even see back there. But the fact of the matter is, he's right up against the people behind him and on the east and the west of him. So I said, he's up against 3 property lines. That's where I'm saying he's gotta get his variance.
No dinner for the children.
Not if we do the
No.
amendment where that's.
Coming in.
But there's only one
You don't
county
know.
line, which is be on
Not-
one
not-
side, he's still too close to the back and he's too close on the neighbor on this side.
He couldn't move it down.
His property, he's got a common side here that he can get it, he's too close here, he's too close here, he needs a variance on both those sides.
He couldn't move it closer
He just
to-
put his
He's 50 feet
neighbor's
wide.
yard.
And to your point, if we
They've got a
keep
garage
doing
there.
these, allowing these variances, then the whole regulation is
It's
just out of.
meaningless, it
Yeah.
becomes meaningless.
And I told him, I said, you couldn't get a variance based on
Yeah,
this.
having said that, I probably acquired 480 variances a good day doing it. But I was saying,
I will-
90% of them were not inherited on every one, because
Right.
it was your.
And the state of Connecticut's looking at that right now,
I know.
because I know every town is doing
Right,
it.
right, we're trying.
Should we adjourn though first?
Yeah, I'll accept the motions to adjourn. Second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?